Am I on?
Yeah. No, there we go. There's the button. I just spent all morning in clinic, and as he mentioned, I'm an ophthalmologist, and you guys are not getting any younger. And so, just so you know, that I think one good basic screening test for sort of a photoretinal stress recovery test, if you can handle 35 minutes of 2 screens larger than my first apartment, you're probably doing okay ophthalmologically. We're day four here at the park. We haven't even done a full church camp week here at this place, you know? 2 more nights before Dad even comes, picks us up. We could do I guess the kids have already done the water balloon fight. We're the grown-ups, so maybe we could do like a cleanest cabin contest in our classroom and see who would vote on that. And already, I feel like that some of the memories have started to fade. And I'm starting to get okay with the idea that never again will I be able to sneak out of class and get a muchacho at Taco Bueno. The people at Brookside are never going to be able to get a cherry limeade right after communion. The people at Jinx can no longer slip 3 minutes away to Ted's restaurant and get the free queso and then leave before actually ordering food. And we now can begin to see this place, not for the fantasy that it once was, but for the reality that it's actually become. A huge auditorium, 2 screens, larger than my hometown church auditorium, capable of transmitting Mitch's bald spot with enough brightness to signal small ships lost at sea. But even still, we are having to understand that at least at some point, to some degree, in this big transition, I realize I left my remote in probably somewhere else. Don't have my remote. We are getting older, we're getting forgetful. Somewhere in this multiplex, there's a really nice little infrared remote. You're welcome to it now, it's yours. But not all of us have been listened to with everything we've done. I've tried to submit ideas, not all of them were appreciated. Will started up the coffee shop and without much of a vote named it The Perk. I had recommended the Skippin' Class Cafe, which I thought was more representative of, that'll work, which I thought was more representative of reality. But then just this evening, just a couple of hours ago, Will texted me and realized we may have a truce coming in because my beverage of choice, the only beverage that has never been seen in a church coffee shop that I've ever been to, Coke Zero, is now here. And as you can see in the bottom, he put, "This just in at Skippin' Class." So at least in a text message, he's acknowledging the actual name of our coffee shop. So at least in one regard, I've been listened to, but in other things, I don't know that I really have been. We knew we needed a new name for the building. We knew that this was not going to work. So I said, because of our location, we should sell the naming rights to our church, and we could become the Quick Trip Church of Christ, or the Whataburger Church of Christ, or the River Spirit Casino Resort Church of Christ. These guys would pay us enough to build a Ferris wheel, and they said no. Would you go to the River Spirit Casino Church of Christ? Would you go to the River Spirit Casino Church of Christ? I know enough of you well enough to know that some of you would say, bring it on. Because there's people there who are looking for God, trying to figure out life just as much as we are. And if there's people there that want to show up with that name on the front, yeah, I want to be there. So what is it you're looking for in a church? Let's say you get transferred to a new city. And in that city, you've done what everybody does on Sunday mornings. For a few weeks, you've done your church shopping, and you've got it narrowed down to 2 congregations. Both congregations are almost exactly alike. Both of them about 1,500 members, same philosophy, same ministry, same kinds of people, same animals on their carousels. There's only one difference between these 2 congregations. This congregation over here is completely filled with people who grew up going to church in a Christian home, raised by parents who grew up going to church in a Christian home. This congregation over here, everyone in here is brand new to the faith, brand new to what's going on. No legacy, no common friends from other cities who went to church too, no Christian college stories. Now, Don't think about it for too long, but get your hand ready because you're going to vote immediately, okay? How many of you would prefer to go to the congregation of all the new, fresh Christians? How many of you would prefer to go to the experienced group? There were more hands that went up for the new, fresh Christians. And I can tell you when I've asked that in class, that's kind of what happens. Then as the hour goes on and we start discussing it a little bit more, people's hands start shifting over here. People's vote starts going over here. Between these two congregations, the fully experienced congregation, the brand new guys, which one of these is most likely in the next 5 years to double in size? These guys. Which one of these congregations is more likely in the next 5 years to close its doors? The new guys also. Ask any church growth expert. These people are more likely to shut down, more likely to have problems. Understand the consequences of the decision. It doesn't say that one is right and one is wrong, but I'm going to make it a little bit harder. Now I'm going to take this choice away. So now you've only got one congregation in this whole city that you really want to go to, and it's going to be these guys, the brand new Christians. And so on a Sunday morning, you decide you're going to drive up into their driveway. Off in the distance, you see a good empty spot in visitors parking. You're set. But as you start to drive through, you see several pickups, and they all have gun racks inside. And over the rearview mirror, they all have Make America Great Again baseball caps. So you drive down closer, and as you get to another part of the parking lot, there's a bunch of Nissan Leafs. And they've all got Bernie Sanders 2020 bumper stickers on here. Half the congregation gets their information from the Huffington Post, half of them gets it from the Drudge Report. For every Democrat, there's a Republican. For every member of the ACLU, there's a member of the NRA. For every Black Lives Matter t-shirt, there's an All Lives Matter t-shirt. For every doctor, there's a malpractice attorney. For every one-cupper, there's a praise teamer. Now which place would you go in? You don't have a choice, you're going here. Now fill out the membership card. Now walk through the front door. Welcome to the Ephesus Church of Christ, or the Way, as it may have been called. Ephesus was probably the most diverse, most elaborately different kind of cultured city, as well as the most diverse congregation that we know about in the New Testament. If you're trying to think about the missionary journeys, there's an easy way to think about it. Don't try to memorize each one. Third journey, just rename it. It was Paul's Ephesus journey. Paul spent 2 years at Ephesus, and you can see why. Ephesus was when you're talking to Ephesus, you're talking to the world. This church was filled with people of different backgrounds, of different beliefs, none of whom knew each other, and none of whom had a whole lot, and many of whom had nothing in common with the other people around them. And this is the kind of crowd that they had to work with. They didn't have any other choices. They didn't have the option of going to the West Ephesus Church of Christ or the Faith United Ephesus Church. They couldn't say, hey, I'm sick of this. Let's go check out lifeephesus.tv. Unlike us in this town, we're to the point now you can customize a church like that new touchscreen at McDonald's, extra ketchup and a 15-minute sermon. I would do that. If I could pick out my own congregation, if I could get a customized order, I would open up that door and I would say, welcome to the non-denominational a cappella, amillennial, multi-cup, pro-Sunday school, church bulletin folded in thirds, C.S. Lewis quotes in the sermon, but only Bible verses posted on the wall. Yes to video sermons, no to video song leadings. Yes to a praise team, but we prefer just giving hidden microphones to the best singers. Yes to a Christmas tree in the church lobby, but never in the auditorium. And the C in church should be capitalized, Church of Christ. I'm glad you're here. That's where I would probably be hanging out. But they didn't have these kind of choices. They didn't have those kind of options. If you were standing in the crowd, if you were standing up here at the Ephesus church, what you would probably see would be clumps. You'd see groups. Over here would be the Jesus-loving Jews. They would understand the meaning of sacrifice and life-changing. But over here, there might be a group of Roman soldiers, retired Roman soldiers. This was a popular place. Ephesus was a popular place for Roman soldiers to retire. In fact, it was probably this group right here that Paul was thinking about when he wrote about the armor of God to the church in Ephesus. Back behind them was a bunch of former pagans who used to worship the goddess Diana. They considered themselves, I would guess, the real Ephesians. They knew where all the right restaurants were. And over here in this corner were some magicians, former magicians. Magicians who were willing to burn, as we learn in the book of Acts, $5 million worth of scrolls because they wanted to turn themselves over to God. And they probably knew people in their little group, in their class, in their section of the parking lot. But I can just imagine that for them to break out of that group and to get into another one would be about as uncomfortable as it is for us sometimes when you're walking down the hallway and you see someone else that you're supposed to know but you don't really, and both of you got places to go. You know the drill. Awkward smile, raised eyebrows, tilted head, and then mouth the word, hi, but you don't actually have to say it. And then we just keep moving on. And that's part of our conversation for a lot of us here. And then it just gets worse. In here, on Sunday morning, Bryson Holly stands up here and says, okay, everybody, just stand up and talk to somebody standing next to you. We're going to give you 5 minutes just to do all the talking you want to the people around you. That's not a fair imitation of Bryson. But when he's asking me to be friendly to strangers early in the morning, that's how I view him. And so here it comes, time for me to talk to a stranger. And I'm getting up out of the chair, and there's nobody around me. I know there's somebody behind me, but I'm not sure who it is. And all I'm thinking is, please let it be somebody I know. Please let it be somebody I know. Then I get an eye, and I'm like, oh, great, it's a stranger. And now I have to pretend to be charming. So then I turn all the way around, and I say, it's good to have you guys here. So you guys from out of town? You visiting? To which they respond, no, we've been going here for years. Yeah, Central Branch, that's where we go to. You probably don't know us because we spend so much time teaching the kids in the class. Curtis, Braden, Anna, Zoe, that's your kids, right? We just love your kids. And I'm going, all right, that's just fascinating. Okay, Bryson, you can start singing anytime now. That's my Sunday morning. Jennifer my wife gave the best advice to the young families class that I've ever heard. Never ask anybody in this place if they're a member. It's like asking a woman if she's pregnant. You don't want to know. You're only going to get yourself in trouble. Back to Paul. Paul is writing this book while he's in prison, several years after he had spent some time with them. And you can start to see that he is just begging this church to try to get along, to try to come together. At the beginning, it's more beautiful, the ones that we quote. Keep the unity of the Spirit, keep peace, one body, one spirit, one hope. But as this chapter wears on, it almost is like he's starting to become desperate. Build people up. Get rid of your anger. Be kind. It's as if he sees these groups, and there's one group over here that could benefit so much from getting together with this group over here. And they get closer, but when they just need each other the most, it turns around like this. Everybody do that. Get your hands out like this. Hands out all the way in front of you. Thumbs up, okay? Now, flip your hands so your thumbs are down now. Got that? Lift your left hand up just a little bit. This hand is someone, some family, some other group in need of you. And this is you. Bring that left hand up and come all the way over. And now lock up. And now your left thumb should be on the bottom. Put your left thumb, okay, now with me. Okay, left thumb on the bottom. Make sure your left thumb's on the bottom. Okay, good. Now with me. 1, 2, 3. Now, if you're wondering why your hands didn't flip, let's look at Ephesians 3:10. There he goes. His intent was that now, through his church, say that phrase with me, through his church, one more time, through his church, the manifold, say that word with me, manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms. That is quite a mouthful. But now, on this next slide, now you got it all there together. And for those of you who've grown up in the church, grown up in the churches of Christ or in a lot of evangelical circles, you'll know this song from youth rallies and workshops and things like that. So if you don't mind together, let's sing this with me, will you? Okay, I'm kidding. This is not actually a song. Nobody's put that to music. You've got four strange clauses and phrases stuck together. This is not something that's exactly musical. In fact, if you go to one of my favorite Bible nerd websites, topverses.org, you see this verse. Topverses.org ranks Bible verses on search engine requests of how often people look for this Bible verse. Ephesians 3:10 ranks the 2,999th most popular verse in the Bible, which means if we did a Wednesday evening service going through the most beloved verses in the Bible, we would not get to Ephesians 3:10 for 57 years. So pay close attention because this verse is probably not going to be coming back in your lifetime. But as you try to piece this verse together, there it is. And it doesn't necessarily help that it's blown up on a screen the size of the Trump Tower lobby, or Michelle Obama's vegetable garden at the White House, or the Chinese buffet in heaven. My daughter and I were trying to come up with these, and there's no other place to use them in the lesson, so I'm just tossing them all in right here. When you have this many clauses and all these things put in together, Ephesians 3:10 starts to be like this unwieldy toddler that you're trying to pick up, and then it wiggles, and then Paul throws out another prepositional phrase, and then there's a clause that gets stick off to one side, and at some point you just say, this is getting uncomfortable, so you put it down and you just move on to verse 11. Now, what does this verse mean? What is it that Paul is trying to get across to us? It is with the family's permission that I share this story. Okay? 3 years ago, I was called into the St. John's emergency room. It was near Christmas, 2.5 years ago, for a 14-year-old boy who was playing with bow and arrow. He and his friend were both playing with bows and arrows, and the friend decided that it would be funny to try to scare him with the bow and arrow. Wheeled back, fired it at him, but did not graze him, and instead, as you're probably ahead of me on the story, it went into his eye. So they called me. By the time I got there, the arrow was already out, but I just walked into the examining room to take a look at him, and I can give you a 5-second course on what the examination is like when you're an ophthalmologist. You walk in, you look over at the nurse and say, call the surgical team, and I'm done. And then I talk to the parents. Then we go to the operating room. I was in there for over 2 hours, close to 2.5 hours. Put in 16 stitches under a microscope, and every stitch, just trying to get white to white, anything that I could do to try to figure out how to get this back together in the right shape. Every stitch felt wrong. And I knew by the time I was breaking scrub that this eye was only going to get worse. And I had accomplished nothing. And then I have to go talk to parents. So I go to the waiting room hoping that it's just going to be the parents, because when you're talking to parents in these situations, I've done this unfortunately a few dozen times, parents just want to know, at this point, all they want to know is my child okay? Is he in pain? When can I see him? But instead, by this time, over the course of the couple of hours that I was in there, over a dozen friends and family had joined in with them. And I looked at it from a distance. I saw that, and without anybody ever being able to read it on my face, what my mind was actually doing was, oh great, a press conference. Because when you walk into a group that big, it becomes a press conference. The parents are definitely blessed to have those friends in there. But for me, the problem is, somebody is going to ask me the question that I don't want to answer. They always ask it. So what are the chances he's going to see? And so I lied. I said, I don't know, maybe 50-50. And then I left, grabbed my cell phone, and I've still got a screenshot of it. I texted my wife and I said, maybe 50-50 that he gets to keep the eye. 1% chance that he's ever going to see anything out of it. And then, for dramatic flourish, and it's because it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I wrote, "I hate my job. Send." 2 days later, the family, the mom and the son, came into the office for my first check of them afterwards. And I had prepared in my mind how to talk to them about this eye is probably going to need to be removed. But what I saw when I walked in was so bizarre that I took a picture of it. It was this. He had a red reflex. Red reflex is one of the most complicated things you can achieve in a traumatized eye like this. He had a red reflex. He had a normal eye pressure. He was able to make out the big E on the eye chart, and not much more. But I was trying to figure out what on earth happened here. This makes absolutely no sense. And it took me 2 or 3 days, including talking to another ophthalmologist about this, trying to piece together how this could even happen. And here's what I think it was. Imagine that you have a beach ball. Okay, you take a beach ball, now fill it with water. Take that beach ball filled with water, and now take, like a lot of balls in sports, now take a bunch of white leather. Take white leather and circle it all the way around with white leather wrapped ball. Okay, so you've got white leather inside is a beach ball filled with water. Now set it over here, get about 30 or 40 feet away, take a bow and arrow, and aim for the very edge of it, so that when the arrow hits your ball, white leather should shred. The beach ball should have a thin sliver of plastic raise up. But, and this is important, not a single drop of water should come out. That's how likely his injury was. Full thickness scleral laceration, partial thickness choroidal laceration, and no retinal detachment. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, understand, he's got a long way to go. He is never going to do much better than where he's at right now. But he can make out his mom's face. Now, what am I supposed to learn? Assuming that something like that happened so that in some way I can learn something, what am I supposed to learn from this? Was this a miracle? No. There was very natural, albeit bizarre and rare circumstances. It was not a miracle. Was it a blessing? For me, you're kind of pushing it. If you're of the mindset that says these kind of things are, and again, I didn't say can be, I didn't say will be someday, I said, is it? And not the circumstances, but the eye itself. Is that a blessing? And I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to go into the camp of saying, no, I don't think so. If you feel like that already it is, that's fine, but please understand, don't make the rest of us sing songs about counting these blessings. Or at least let's count your blessings and transpose it into a minor key. I think instead, there's something else that we don't talk about enough. Besides miracles and blessings, and every bit as important as miracles and blessings, I think what I saw here was a story of redemption. Redemption is a flashlight in a junkyard. Redemption is God shining a light on damaged treasures. The hopeless can hope. The prodigal child just might come home. The drug addict just might get clean. The cancer just might remit. And my son, my friend's son, my friend's son from down the street who just got injured just might come through this surgery okay. Because that's what happened that night. I think what God wanted me to see here did not happen in the operating room, and it did not happen because of a red reflex. I think what happened, what God wanted me to see, was in here on the 3rd floor of St. John's, where after midnight, over a dozen people drove over an hour to a big city, to a big hospital, through a maze of elevators and tunnels and hallways to get here so that they could sit and wait and hope and support. And what's my reaction when I walk up and see him there? Oh, great. Press conference. When you do this trick in front of an audience, it's not really a trick, but it fits the definition of a quick little magic trick if you fool a few people. When you do this trick, it's like most tricks, any magician would tell you, you've got to have some sort of misdirection. The misdirection in this case is to convince everybody they've got to pay a lot of attention to their left thumb, which really makes no difference. It doesn't matter whether you're like this or like this. It's not going to flip over. But now that everybody's focused on their left thumb, it makes sense that the big misdirection then comes, because then I can say, are you sure you have your thumb on there? And then I can flip my hand over. Now, you only have a couple of seconds, though, to get your hand back before people are paying that much attention, because hopefully they're still thinking about their left thumb. You can't really tell for sure if you've got your hand right, except for one thing that I noticed. This hurts. This is not natural. It is not natural to twist your hand like this. You've got a person over here, a family over here, whose life has been turned upside down. It is not natural to drive for 2 hours in the middle of the night to go to a hospital waiting room. It's not natural to sit in the back of a courtroom because one of our own is on trial and just wants a jury to think that he's lovable. It's not natural to spend your retirement years giving away clothes or food or furniture to people you barely even know. But there's people in this church who've allowed their arms to be twisted, who've allowed themselves to get over and twist and to go under that person's hurting, to bring them back into it and flip them back over. And now, when that happens, something wonderful happens that we don't talk about enough, because it's found in the 2,999th most popular verse in the Bible, Ephesians 3:10. Here it is in all its majesty of phrases and clauses. Read it more later, go through it a few times, it'll finally make sense to you. But for right now, just look at the strangest word on there, that word manifold. The original Greek on that, palupoikolos. This is the only time in the entire Bible that the word palupoikolos is used. It is used, the shorter version, without the palu, the word poikolos, is used in the Greek Old Testament to describe Joseph's coat. Joseph's coat of many colors, many textures, many facets, many colors. So now you get to Ephesians 3:10, you've got palupoikolos, which is many, many colors to describe God's wisdom. It is unbelievably colorful. And so if you want to get a bit of a translation of Ephesians 3:10, we'll go with this. We get to show God's wisdom to the angels. And what they see, what the angels see, is more colorful than Joseph's coat. That's from the Brood International version, so don't quote it. But understand this, we're not just a church, we're a glow stick factory. We are an abstract, colorful Jackson Pollock painting that God sees when we get to work. If our goal is to make sure that everybody gets back here safely, that everybody gets here in one piece, then our goals are too small. If our goal is to make sure we have enough space up in the place for classes, then our goals are too small. If our goal is to make sure that we can comfortably seat 1,700, 1,800 people, then our goals are too small. Get back in here. Sing loud Sunday morning with 2,000, 10,000 people. Enjoy the crush as we move toward the classes upstairs, because you know that in all that madness, you're about to go small. You're about to end up in that waiting room. You're going to end up in that courtroom. You're going to end up in that ramshackle apartment where you think that nobody else is watching, when in fact, understand, you are being observed. You are being watched. Somehow, not sure how it works, you are being watched by angels who want to see something like this, who look up into their sky and say, wait a minute, would you look at that? What is that? And another angel comes by and goes, I think that must be Nashville. A lot of good things always happen in Nashville. I said, no, it's west of that. That's Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's the Park Church of Christ. The new, most colorful place on the planet. That's the church I want to be a part of. Thank you.